Yeah, hi guys. I want to give a little warning, but before we get into this, so obviously with the topic of toxic churches and things like that, a lot of stories can be very personal when it comes to talking about this. So I just want to say, if anyone feels uncomfortable at any time, like just be respectful if you're asking a question, that we refrain from too many details, anything like that, because I do want to talk about this cult initially that inspired the podcast episode, but I do want to, also talk about toxic churches because that's such a huge thing. And most people who are in cults and toxic churches don't even realize that they're in them. So before I get started, I want to tell you a little bit about the podcast. The podcast is called the I'm a Christian Who podcast. And basically, we just listen to stories of Christians who have different struggles. So far, we've shared the story of a Christian who survived a mass shooting. Last week, we talked with a Christian who has a porn addiction and is married. And this week, I released I'm a Christian Who escaped a cult. And what I thought was so interesting is because she applied to be on the show and I read her story, and it's unlike a cult that I think a lot of people, and I will say, I don't know whether you're here overseas or America, this is an online cult. And I think when people think of cults, they like to think about, communes and, things like drinking the Kool-Aid and all those kind of severe cults that you hear. But there are cults that are primarily online that can lure you into moving and joining this cult eventually. And the cult that I'm going to talk about today is Shincheonji. And you may not have ever heard that name before, because I know I didn't when I first read her story. But what's so fascinating is that this cult targets people on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and this cult is extremely prevalent today. And not only are they prevalent today, but they are physically in Korea, and they have these followers who, to kind of, I'm trying to think how to put it simply. They are of the belief that their leader is, I believe, the second coming of Christ, or a pastor who is ushering in Christ. And they believe that 144,000 people are going to heaven, and they need that many followers before they're ushered up into heaven. And they use extremely manipulative practices, and they actually use building relationships with people on Instagram and Facebook to entice people into their cult. And I'll get a little bit into sharing her story and what happened, but the people who are in it 100% do not realize that they are in the cult. And some of you listening may actually be in it now and have no idea, because for the beginning stages of this cult, there is no red flags. It is actually, from what I've heard, I've talked to multiple people who are involved in this cult, that it is actually a really good Bible study for the first 6 months or so. And they basically use that to lay the groundwork for when they introduce these kind of crazier ideas and talking about their leader and kind of indoctrinating you. So they start brainwashing you before you even realize you're being brainwashed. So before we start, I want to play a little game because I thought this was interesting. I would love for everybody in the chat. I know we're all from all over the world, but I would love for everybody in the chat to take a wild guess. How many active cults, that means still, how many active cults do you think are in the United States specifically right now? I would love to see you guys put a number, just a guess of how many cults are currently active in the United States. I'm reading this number, seeing 350, 1,000, 5,000, 2,000. Every single guess so far is too low. Every single guess so far is too low. And that was mind-boggling to me too, that there are this many. This is in the United States. It is estimated that there's about 10,000 active cults in the United States alone right now. And the fact of the matter is, the thing that's shocking to us is we feel like we would hear more about this, right? We feel like this would be more prevalent in the news and things like that. But a lot of these are smaller. A lot of them can be even a home church or something like that. But I never knew that cults could be online. So to give you a history of how I met Delia and how I was able to share her story, years ago on my page, if you've never heard of the Christians Who Curse Sometimes page, what I do in my stories is I introduce really controversial Christian topics, and I let people just share their stories without judgment. So I did a topic a few years ago on cults, and I said, has anyone been in a cult, and what was your experience getting out of it? And Delia had DM'd me just kind of a short couple paragraphs explaining like, hey, I was part of this online Bible study. It turned out to be a Korean cult. I had no idea, all of that. So I posted it. When I posted it, I got a ton of messages from other people who said, "Oh my God, I think I'm in this cult too. I'm in an online Bible study. I found it the exact same way she did." So I connected these people with her, and she was able to help them escape. So I didn't realize how big of a deal it was. So I ended up speaking with her, and I wrote an article about it. If you want to read it, on your own time on christianswhocursemetimes.com, you can read kind of her story and of other people. So I wrote this article and I posted it, and I had even more people come forward and saying, "Oh my gosh, I just saw your article. I think I'm in this cult too, and I had no idea." So I connected these people with her, and she was able to help them get out. So it's just been absolutely crazy, that this cult and that people who are in it don't even realize. So I want to share a little bit about her story. Obviously, you can listen to her story on the I'm a Christian Who podcast. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I think there's a raise hand feature, and I would love to have you up to ask what it is. I'm going to try to keep up with the chat. But Delia basically was a woman who she wasn't doing any particular searching for any type of community. She just had an art page. She, did a lot of Christian art, and she liked to post it to Instagram. And the way that this cult had got into her was they just started as fans of her art page because she was looking to inspire people, and she was getting very kind messages. And this isn't like a cold message where it's like, "Hi, my name is John and I run a Bible study and I'd like you to join." They actually focus on building a relationship with people first, which is pretty scary. So this person started a relationship with her, started complimenting her art, said they really liked it, and all of that. And they had been talking for days. And she talked about how it's a ministry, and he basically said, "Oh, by the way, so crazy. I'm a Christian too, and I'm a part of this online Bible study. You should think about joining it." Now, this is where I would bet all of you are like, there's the red flag. She's just got to look up the Bible study, and then she'll be able to see that it's kind of weird or something like that, and she'll get away. No, because what this cult does, and this is what might shock you, is not only do they build fake websites for fake colleges and churches that run Bible classes and Bible studies that look fully operational, they also go onto Google Maps and take up abandoned, warehouses, things like that, and mark them as that church and as that college, so that if you were to look them up in Google, not only would you see an address, you would see a full website that has reviews from obviously other people in on this cult. So she had no reason to doubt that this was not real. The other way they got her was they said, "Hey, it's like, I'll help you, get in for free." So what she sees, I believe she thought hers, I mean, they use a lot of different names and a lot of different, websites and things like this. But the one that she saw was a theological school, I believe. And she looked and they had a whole, site built out that said that they offer Bible studies. And they basically said, like, "We're going to get it to you for free." And she was like, "Wow, I'm getting, what a gift." So she said the first Bible study, this is where the story gets crazy. The first Bible study was 4 to 6 sessions. It was just, a month, once a week for about an hour. And she took it, and she said it was really kind of a basic Christian teaching. So it was a lot of the more famous parables that she had heard. And it was only about an hour a week. And she told them, she goes, "I was really looking for something more high level. I would love to, like move up to level 2. So when she moved up, oh my gosh, Courtney, so awesome seeing you in the chat saying that you're a victim of this cult. It's so again, people don't realize how common it is. I would bet that I was shocked. I'm surprised, but not surprised that somebody in here was a part of this. So anyway, when she moved up into level 2, all of a sudden the classes went from being once a week, 1 hour, to twice a week at 2 hours each. So all of a sudden, and on top of that, she said there was a 30-minute breakout group after. So they basically pulled her in, and she was doing, Delia, if you're here, I don't know if you're here, Delia, please correct me if I get the story wrong, but she said they would have 5 hours. So she'd have 5 hours a week where she was doing this Bible study. And, her her mom at the time was making comments saying, how committed she was to this cult and all of this. And but it all seemed at that point, she'd been in it for months, no red flags. She said, even looking back, there were not times where she was like, this is creepy, this is weird. It's just a lot of talk of Jesus's parables. Now, this will all make sense later, why they focused on Jesus's parables. Now, her first red flag, when I asked her what her first red flag was she said she had to miss a session. So she emailed, her professor and said, I have to miss. And they said, oh, well, we'll just have to make it up. And she goes, oh, no, I don't want to bother you. You don't have to do that. Like, that's fine. I'll just catch up on the next class. And the professor or the teacher was insistent that she make it up. So it was really weird how pushy they were being. She said that was kind of her first red flag. So she went and made it up and did a whole, Ellie, oh my gosh, you guys, the fact that so many of you know this, I'm so glad that we're telling this story, because if anyone in here, doesn't know this, and if it happens to you in the future, I'm so glad that we can warn you about this and get you out of it. So she does her makeup class, and she said a lot of those like breakout groups were just parroting back what they had taught. They said, like, say it word for us, and all this stuff. Yes, here we go. Shell. They've been new heaven and new earth, a new religious movement. It's Lee Man He. That's exactly what it is. All over the world, this is happening, you guys. So I want to open this up for questions, but I want to kind of talk about how she got out. Really, really lucky on her part, how she got out, because she said she was just scrolling. YouTube, and she saw a YouTuber, just some guy, I think she said, sitting in his car, and it was a 3-minute video that just said, I can't remember exactly what she said the fake church was called, but it was like Word of Life something very generic. And it said Word of Life Bible studies are a cult or something like that. So she went, oh my gosh. And it was just her algorithm that put it in front of her. So talk about God, intervening and putting that in front of her. She said she watched that 3-minute video and knew that all of a sudden they were a cult. So she messaged the original page, that artist that had, talked to her and said, like, is this Shincheonji? Is this about Lee Man He? Like, what is going on with this? And the person just said, no, please talk to your professor. So long story short, she had an hour meeting with her professor, and they basically tried to convince her that this is all real and that Lee Man He is the promised prophet that is coming to usher in, Jesus and all of this. And the scary thing is, for Delia, she didn't have to deal with a lot of this, but for the other women who I actually connected with Delia, when it came time for them to leave, this is where it gets really scary. And I really would love to be very careful if you get messages from these people. By the time you get to the point where you realize it's too late, for her, it was about 6 months in. She was a part of it for 9 months, 6 months before she saw any red flags. But by the time you get to that point, they know who you are. They know who your family is. They know your social media accounts. They know, because you've gotten to know these people. Remember, it's a Bible study. So you have these conversations with these people and really get to know them. So people have reported that they've been threatened, that they say, like, if you leave this, that, and the other thing, we're going to do this. And they were telling her, don't talk to your pastor about us. He won't get us. We're just going to get attacked. It's a very, very scary cult. And if you think that this isn't something you would fall for, remember the lengths that they go to convince people that this is a real thing. Look at Ellie's story that she just posted. They lured me into matching with a guy on a Christian dating app and had me take counseling sessions for a month, and then had me start doing a massive Bible study. Like, the levels that this cult goes through to manipulate people to come into their Bible study is absolutely insane. I didn't know that any of you guys had any experience with this, but if any of you, I will tell you that the telltale signs right now. And then again, if anyone has any questions, just raise your hand. A lot of the telltale signs that this is this cult specifically is they like to use whiteboards and stick figures for some reason. So if you're in a Bible study and they're kind of drawing stuff on a whiteboard in the background, that's a big red flag that it's this cult. If you can't miss and they're very insistent on making up, that's another thing. The other big red flag is the repeating back, and I'll tell you why the repeating back. When she said they had me parrot back what I had learned. Is because they are basically, in order to pass their class and get on into the next level and all this, you have to take a test. And Delia, the woman in the podcast, took her first test, which she aced, but they keep giving you deeper and deeper tests to kind of prove that you've been indoctrinated as you're going. So by the time you're in too late, this cult in Korea, they basically take quizzes to make sure that they have the best understanding so that they can be in that 144,000 that eventually gets ushered up into heaven. So absolutely crazy stuff. And the other thing that I want to share with you guys, that was actually very scary for me this week. So we released the podcast on Monday morning. And I had marketed it on social media, I think early that afternoon. Within 1 or 2 hours of posting the clip of Delia, which is at I'm a Christian Who podcast on Instagram, and then releasing the episode, we started getting messages from suspicious accounts that we think were likely related to the cult, and they were all asking to get in touch with Delia, who is the woman on the podcast. So she had interacted with one of them. She is fairly positive that it was people in the cult trying to get the episode taken down or trying to get people to stop talking about it. And I very boldly posted, I'm not going to take it down. I don't know how many people from the cult are watching this or anything like that, but we made the decision not to take it down. Delia was also okay. She didn't feel under any sort of threat, I believe. I messaged her when they had reached out to me and started commenting. I did delete their comments, so don't go and look for them because I didn't want them to loop in other people. In going through their comments, they were very, very suspicious accounts. So all this to be said, I was shocked to learn about this cult a couple years ago, and I think it's crazy to me that more people aren't talking about it. So if any of you who had this experience, if you're willing to come up and raise your hand in here and talk about it, I know I saw a couple people. Again, no pressure. I saw Ellie, and there was a Courtney, I believe, before, who had been through the same thing. If either of you are willing to come up, yep, here it is, Ellie again. I'd have to memorize Bible verses and interview after counseling sessions, 3 hours Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, 3 to 4. Yeah, it's so much time. And I think that what they do is there's a theory in faith called the sunk cost fallacy, and I don't know how many of you have dealt with that. A lot of Christians do struggle with this, but cults actually use that fallacy to keep people in their cults. Is basically it's the mindset of, I've already dedicated so much time to this that I can't leave now because it would be too embarrassing and too much of a waste of a time for me to leave. And a lot of Christians struggle with that when they deconstruct or when they're in a toxic church, because they're like, well, I've dedicated 10 years of my life to this church. Like, if I just leave, what was all that for? And that's what this cult kind of does, expedited on Zoom, where they have you in there. I mean, Delia only got to the point where it was 2 hours or 2.5 hours, 2 days a week. But it looks like Ellie had a similar story where she was in them 3 hours, 3 days a week. All of a sudden, it can become a full-time job. And when that happens, you struggle more with that sunk cost fallacy of, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed that I wasted this much time, that you don't want to. Oh, here she is. Hi, Ellie. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you?
Ellie, I am so happy that you're willing to come up here and talk about this, because again, I'm somebody who did not realize how common this cult was, and with how many women. I mean, I've seen them target mostly women, but I know there's men in it too. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with how they recruited you and how they found you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm able to say the platform, out of respect, but it was a different platform. It was actually a Christian dating site. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if I'm able to share it.
Well, if it wasn't, I mean, if it wasn't Salt, I'm happy if you say the name. I mean,
Okay, okay, yeah, it was Holy. It was the Holy app, and
wow.
so they basically had, I guess, like a cute guy, go on there and like message different people, and I was one of the people that got messaged, and they basically did like small talk, and then we jumped on a call. I guess the first red flag was the fact that I jumped on the call with this guy, and he was like basically asking me like a lot of questions and stuff like that. And so I've always been the type of woman, at least back then, when I was younger, to basically be an open book and share, like my testimony, because he automatically was like, what is your testimony? So that's how that was another red flag, to where he asked me right away, and I was open and vulnerable. And at the time, I was grieving the loss of a lot of family members, and I had lost 5 family members in 1 year, a few years prior, and I hadn't healed yet. And so I had shared that with him, and he was like, I think I want to connect you with this person, so you can start counseling sessions. And it was like, around the time where COVID was around, and so I'm sorry, like, like just everything was in shambles at the time, and so we basically had it to where we would meet with the counselor on Zoom, and he would also be in the call. And so it would be to where we would, um, have exchange dialogue, and just go through like the principles of.
Now, was this
Mhm.
was this a real counselor? Like, was this a therapist, or do you think this was just somebody from the cult that was all part of their big plan?
Yeah, I honestly truly believe that it was somebody that was quote unquote like a like I don't think they were licensed or anything like that, but I think it was just someone that they trained as like a
Hmm.
counselor per se. Um, and I do think, I'm not gonna say that it didn't help. It did help, um, but it's just like their teachings were not correct, at least from what I was taught, like what I was, because I know that this platform does have different what is the word, different religions and different backgrounds and stuff like that. So I think for me, like the first like the true part where I was like, it just felt so bad. It was whenever, they made me go into, like I said, into the Bible studies. And so they were forcing us to do the Bible studies Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. And I would work on Saturday mornings, and they would have me to where I couldn't miss. And so I had to literally rearrange my life to be able to make these events.
Now, hold on.
Um,
I have to stop you there for a second because I want to ask, how like the people in your life, like to commit to something that's 3 hours, 3 times a week, that is so much time. Were you talking about this with the people in your life and were they like, this is a little strange? Or how were you handling that?
yes, yes, coming from a family, I have a sister-in-law that she is a PK. And so coming from that, background with her, she honestly noticed red flags as well. I would have to miss dinners because I would sometimes babysit throughout the week. And so I would have to miss dinners, and I would stay up really, really late studying. I really wouldn't have a life, to be honest with you, for those few months I was in it. And so, yes, like they noticed. And so, yeah, they were, if I'm gonna be honest with you, they were like, don't share what you're doing with people, and like what we're talking about with
Yeah.
people.
I
Mhm.
do want to say because someone in the chat just wrote, but if you were part of a local church community, would you have avoided this? And I want to say Delia said the same thing because she was a part of a local church community and they were very clear, like not to talk to your pastor about this and that this was like additive, but not to talk to your pastor. So they were very like, I think a lot of the people who are being indoctrinated into this cult are a part of a local church community too.
At least for me personally, I wasn't in a local community. I was prior to this, but being the fact that, for one, just to give you a little bit of background, I wasn't within the church, like like attending in person, because like I was telling you earlier, a year prior, um, to the whole pandemic, shutdown and everything like that. I went. That's whenever I lost my family members, so 2019, and then a year prior to that, I was in Bible school.
Mhm.
So I wasn't in like my actual home church from, I'm gonna say, about 2018, all the way until like 20 2022.
Mhm.
I dealt with a lot of anxiety with being around people at the time. I wasn't able to be with a large group of people. I would just shake really badly. And so that's why, and then also to protect my clients, because I work with moms, expecting mothers, and just motherhood. And so just to be able to protect them from COVID, I wouldn't go out. I wouldn't go out anywhere. And so I barely, thankfully, thank God, I finally was able to come back to church in person this year. So I've been faithfully going this year since January, and I'm so thankful for that. But I was speaking to one particular person from my home church throughout this. Whenever I was in the cult, and I was having dialogue with him, and I was letting him know like what was going on, and how I didn't feel peace about it, and how, like, what their specific doctrine was. And he's like, "Yeah, Ellie, you really need to pray about it." But he's like, in all honesty, he's like, "I feel like this is a cult, and you need to leave." And I prayed about it, and like I said, um I wasn't feeling peace about it. And so I finally, I sent a message, because they have everybody have like their designated person that they talk to. Then they would
Yeah,
pick
they
in
said,
different.
yeah, from what I heard, they structure it a lot with like mentors. Like you have somebody
Mm-hmm,
who you kind of report to, who you can ask questions to.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like a leader, then the counselor, then the person that they designate us to, and then they had like us and like a group of three. And
Yeah.
there was one other girl that I was trying to get out of it too, but she just, I don't know if she stayed or not, to be honest with you. I kept on trying to message her. I'm like, hey, like, please get out. This is a cult. Like, but I guess she stayed.
So
I don't
Ellie,
know.
what was your experience when you told them you wanted to go? Because I've heard
Yeah.
a lot of different stories that they really fight for you to stay, and some people have said that it was harder for them to leave than others. So what was it like when you told them, "Hey, this is a cult. I've got to go," and what happened after that?
Yeah. So I didn't say that it was a cult. Like, I didn't tell them directly, but I did tell them like how, like, I was gonna be not attending these courses anymore, these Bible studies, and I just felt, I just prayed about it, and I didn't feel peace with continuing to do this, the program anymore. And so they were questioning me, like, why. They kept on bombarding me. Even like the leader of the group like started messaging me, texting me, calling me. um, and then the guy that rode me in, he would text me too. um, and so it was just like all kinds of people trying to like keep you in. And then like the person that they designated to just be like that, um, what is it called, not the counselor but the other one,
Like a
the,
mentor?
yeah, yeah, like a mentor. She would, she was the one that was like, "Oh, if you leave, it's just the enemy trying to like attack you, to stray you away from your blessings, and you can't go out into the world again," and like just telling me all these different things. I was trying to find the text messages, actually. I just can't remember their names. Um, so I was trying to find it so I can like actually read what they were saying. I mean, I don't know if I can stay connected with you to some degree. So I can like maybe send you the screenshots or anything like that. Cause I'm pretty sure, like I said, I have them somewhere. It's just going to be a matter of remembering their names. But I did end up having to block them because it got too crazy. To where, like I said, they kept on messaging me and calling me, leaving me voicemails. Um, and so the funny thing is, like, I don't know if y'all know how Facebook works, but it's like if you look for somebody twice, if you're not like, if you don't have any mutual friends, it'll come up as suggested friends. And
Yeah.
so the guy that wrote me in has been looking for me because I haven't blocked, but he's been
Wow.
looking for me years later. Yes. And so he came up like, as to add him as a friend. And I'm just like, that's kind of weird because, how would he how would he find me, and I'm not gonna lie to you, there was times where, if I'm gonna be 100% blunt and honest with you, like, they did ask me for my address because they needed, supposedly, to like like send messages or send like newsletters or like books or whatever. And so I there, for the first few months, I'm not gonna lie to you, like, I was fearful of my life, if I'm gonna be 100% honest with you with you guys right now. um and I'm like, what if they want to like attack me, my family? And I'm like, no, I'm covered by the blood of Jesus. Like, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. You know what I'm saying? So like, I had to check myself and really think and be like, no, like, I am covered.
So, Ellie, what are some of the warning signs that you want men or women to know? Because I mean, the thing is, you said it too, that when you started the counseling and the Bible study, that it was actually helpful. And every single person that I talked to said that when they started it, they said it was actually a good Bible study at the beginning, because like they were learning a lot, they were having good discussions, and I think that's how they get people. So there might
Mm-hmm.
be people listening right now who are in it right now and are still telling themselves like, nope, this is not the one I'm in. So what are some of the red flags that people need to look out for?
I think the red flags for sure is you guys need to listen to Holy Spirit. You know, listen to I'm sorry, not the red flags, but like that's something that you guys should do. Listen to Holy Spirit, of course. Um and then also have it to where you you stay in contact with people to be able to be in community with people, and so that way like people can keep you accountable as well. But as far as red flags, I would say, like I was saying earlier, like if they ask you for your testimony right off the bat, because I do think now, you know, as I'm older and now that I've experienced life more as well, is that I do believe that it does, at least for me, it will take a little bit of time to get to know somebody, to be able to exchange, you know, us giving our testimony. You know what I'm saying? At
Mhm.
least, you know, a few weeks, a week, at least time, but not like on initially, like the first talk. You know what I'm saying? Like the very, very first initial off the jump. Like, no, I don't think that that's something that should be done. Um, Another thing would be, of course, to Google this type of to see like if there's any information on YouTube, to see if there's any um anything that can come up with this organization, to be able to get some insight to see if they're actually legit or not. Um, Seek counsel as well, you know, from your local community too. Um, Another red flag would be,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean,
as far as like free counseling, like there's really no free counseling. You know, that's
yeah,
why
I
it's
mean,
red
I,
flags
I
for me.
always tell people like if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. But I think the big red flags people need to look out for, and this goes for churches and for cults, because a lot of cults can start out feeling like good churches. So anything, yeah, like everybody's saying this in the chat, which is absolutely true, is the secrecy element to it. If you feel like you cannot ask questions of leadership, and if you do, and the answers they give you are also include secrecy, those are huge red flags that you need to get out now. And that
Mm-hmm.
goes to a physical church too. If you go to leadership and you bring them a question about the Bible that you want to learn more about, or you know, hey, I actually really struggle with what you talked about on Sunday, I don't know if I agree with it. People should
Mm-hmm.
be able to say that to their pastor, and their pastor should turn that into a beautiful conversation where you learn. If they're saying things like, this is the enemy feeding you lies, if they're saying things where they're basically putting you down for asking questions, that is a huge red flag. And
Mm-hmm.
then telling you not to ask for counsel outside of the church or group, that is another huge red flag. I actually looked up prior to this, what are qualities of toxic churches? And I want you guys to think about your church while I'm reading these and see if you feel like you might be in one of these. Because if you are, it's time to seek help and get out. And because I promise there are healthy churches out there. And first of all, before I get to this, Ellie, you don't have to sit through this. Thank you so much for sharing your story. That was amazing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut her off like that. I was just trying to to finish up and get to this. So well, I do want to read. So here are some of the qualities of toxic churches that I want you guys to hear. Um, a church is considered toxic when one, people are critical and judgmental of others who are different. We all know that is not Christ-like. There is that fine line, though, you know, where you know there are people we need to reach, but we should not turn it into an us versus them mentality. Number two, if it's focused on perpetuating itself rather than uplifting Christ. This is a huge one. If your church is all about the pastor or all about the church itself, more so than Christ, that's a big red flag. The other one, that it's always right in its own eyes. Like if they are saying like the whole world is wrong and we're the ones who are right, that is a red flag. The other one, it's intellectually closed. You should be able to ask questions and have them be intellectually open to your viewpoint. Next one, number 5, its leaders lead by power instead of servant leadership, and where abusers are protected while the pain of victims is ignored. If you know that people in your church have had pain by leadership in the church and their pain is being ignored, that is a big red flag. Also, servant leadership is a biblical perspective. Power is different. Servant leadership, pastors should be serving the people in their church, not telling them what to do. Number 6, if members are squabbling over power, if you see a hierarchy of people fighting to get to the top, that is not a good place for you to be. If it's divided, if there are people in there who are arguing about little things, also a bad sign. The members are without love and unity for and with each other. Again, love should be the forefront of your church. And then members mixing politics and religion from the pulpit and try to knock down the walls separating church and state. If your church says either the government is out to get us or you have to vote this way or support this thing if you call yourself a Christian, again, red flags. I know a lot of people will say a lot of Christians should be a certain way, or biblically, I believe Christians should vote a certain way. But when your pastor is up there telling you who to vote for, telling you how to vote, telling you a political stance you need to believe in order to be a Christian, that is putting politics above faith. So those are just some things for you guys to know. Thank you guys for this. I don't know if anybody has any other questions, but to give you guys, thank you to Ellie for sharing your story. If you guys want to hear Delia's story, it's the I'm a Christian Who podcast. It's available where all podcasts are, Apple, Spotify, Google, all of those places. Next week, wanted to give a little teaser because Monday's episode is going to be a really tough episode for a lot of people to listen to because it's from a Christian who has bipolar disorder. And he shares a lot of his struggles with mental health and how it's been looked down upon by his church and how he's kind of overcome that and learned to find hope through his mental health challenges. He is a married man. He talks a lot about the practical struggles of being married while having a mental health disorder, and some things he had to talk to his wife about and some safety measures for himself. It's a really fascinating story and one that I haven't heard before because one topic that the church is not great at talking about is mental health. So, anyway, thank you guys so much for coming today. Thank you, Ellie, for sharing your story. And if anyone has any questions about this, or if you think you might be in it, in this cult, please feel free to reach out to me. I can connect you with Delia and she can help you escape safely.